Welcome to the Drama Coach podcast. I'm Lisa, actor and coach, and I help young performers and the people that are supporting them build confidence, skill, and a real understanding of the industry. Today's episode is about something every actor and every parent of a young performer will face, and that's not getting the role. And I want to talk about this honestly because it's emotional, it can knock confidence, and it's also completely normal. I've had lots of thoughts in preparing for this episode, from reframing rejection and, what you can call it and how you can present it to your children, through to should you protect your children entirely from some of these no's or some of these, no answer at all. And I'll talk about that a little more. I think the general answer to that is that you know your child. And in this industry, there are plenty of never finding out at all. No email, no feedback. And you may already know this by now, or this may be terrifying news to you. It's important, I think, that you know your child well enough. If you want to shield them from some, I apply for things for my youngest all the time. And the ones that I get no response for, that she doesn't need to action, I don't bother telling her about. I used to when it was really early days, but now there are so many. I don't need to tell her about every submission. Of course, she might want to know from auditions that she's done, but sometimes if she's got a round of several auditions and, they're not huge. I think when you get much bigger things or parts that you can envisage or well-known TV series, then you want to know the answer. But I think when you're just churning out and you're not even entirely sure what they're for as a child, you don't worry too much and you don't chase them up. Anyway, I digress from my actual plan, but I thought it was a good idea just to drop that in. So the first main thing I want to say is I think it's important to acknowledge this feeling. It's disappointing, isn't it? For the child and for you. And that hurts. And that's hard. Whether they're the performer or you're perhaps a young performer listening to this, I sympathise, I empathise. It is hard to feel that rejection. And we'll talk about the word rejection in a minute. So like I said, sometimes you don't even get a no, you just get complete silence. And that's absolutely normal in this industry. And I don't know another industry that does this. If you go for a job interview or any application really, I believe you usually get at least a polite no. But the complete silence can be something that takes a little getting used to. I'm totally cool with it now, to be honest, and it doesn't bother me. And then it's just a nice surprise when I do get some yeses, or to be honest, it makes me even more grateful for the polite no's. If I get a polite no with some nice feedback about myself or either of my daughters, it's actually another positive step, and it feels pretty good sometimes to get some of those no's. That sounds a little crazy, but I guess it's flipping the mindset, isn't it? And taking the positives out of everything that you do get, even if it's not the role. So I've seen a lot of parents really play the waiting game, not necessarily with roles, but perhaps with scholarships or auditions for particular schools, drama schools, dance schools, etc., or summer placements and things. They are usually told by these people, you'll get an email by a particular date telling you yes or no. And they hang on to this, and they hang on to it hard, and they're anxious about it, and they're checking and rechecking their emails, and the date comes, perhaps they've missed us off. And there is genuine panic from these parents, especially in the early days. But I think this is a really bad idea, because that energy is going to be absorbed by your child. And if they're going into this industry, they are going to start feeling anxious and nervous, waiting for those dates, waiting for that email ping, that phone call, whatever it is. And I know it's hard, parents. But if you can, I think the best thing is to do what we try to teach the young actors in the industry, and that's submit and let it go. I'm not saying never check your junk emails, because I think we had a request once that went into our junk emails. So do be careful. Perhaps you periodically check those, or something's coming up, so you do want to check your junk emails or whatever. Of course, I'm not saying be rash and just forget all about it, especially if you've been told you will get an answer. But put it out of your mind, or at least to the back of your mind. Go and do something nice with your child. Be focused on they've done the audition, they did a great job, or something went wrong and therefore they learnt from it. It's done, and that needs to be looked at as a win. They did the preparation, they did the performance or the audition, whatever it was, the callback, they did it. And those things should absolutely not be taken away from. Those are the wins, those are the jobs. They are performers by doing those things. And regardless of the outcome, they've done well because they did that audition. They turned up, they gave it their best, whatever circumstances were going on. That's a win. And I think if we can shift that as parents from it's only wins if they get the yes. Gosh, if it was only a win when you got the yes, this could be a really destructive, upsetting place to be. So try and find the wins in actually doing the auditions. So the kind of phrases that you might hear from those parents, or you might have going on in your head, or might come out loud to see if you are this kind of parent is, oh, it should be today, or maybe I've missed it, and why haven't we heard? If those kind of thoughts are whizzing round your head, then you need to try your best to push them out, to forget it. And I know it's not easy, to be there for your child, because they'll totally pick up on that energy. We know that a lot of children's memories aren't necessarily what happened, it's the way they felt. So try your hardest not to have those thoughts whizzing around your head. Distract yourself with something wonderful or something simple that perhaps you and your child can do, or you can do to push those thoughts aside. So my next point literally says children mirror your emotions. And I've just said that. If you're anxious, if you're waiting, if you're overthinking, they are going to feel it. And they don't need that in this industry. Even if you're not saying those thoughts aloud, they'll probably feel it. And it turns something that was just an audition into something that is pressure, expectation, and perhaps something bigger than it needs to be. If they are going into this industry, they are going to have audition after audition after audition, hopefully. So the last thing you want is for this audition to become this huge bundle of pressure, expectation, etc. And I know this not just from being a coach, but from my own childhood memories as well. So I've always wanted to act as a young child. And so consequently, lots of auditions, lots of praise, lots of doing well at dancing, etc. But also lots of no's, or you don't get that lead part, but you do get this smaller part, or perhaps you didn't get that part at all, which I think when I was quite young was tricky, because I'd be put forward for lots of auditions and get into those shows, and that was great. And then when I didn't, my mum was gutted about it. I remember her being so upset and telling everybody how it breaks her heart when I don't get the part. Or I think the first time, it was a bit of a shock. And then as I got older, went for more parts. Subsequently, mathematically, there were more parts that I didn't get. That's just the nature of it, right? But to my mum, that was a rejection. And I'd always been a child who'd done well, passed every test. So this was hard for her, and she would understandably, feel really sorry for me. But looking back, that's not what I needed. We think that's kindness, that she felt sorry for me. But in hindsight, that made me feel even worse, because not only have I not got that part or failed that audition. Never tell your child that, that's horrible. My mum didn't say that at all. She was just being a natural, caring mum. But now I feel like I've upset her in some way too, because she's upset. So I'm now, by her lovely sympathy, is actually making us all suffer more than we needed to. And I only really understand that now as an adult and approaching the industry myself and approaching it through my children. So please don't do that to your children if you can help it. We your own way. I'm not here to tell you, how to conduct your life. But if you want to help that child, find what works for you. We shouldn't hide our emotions, should we? That's not healthy either. But to limit your emotion, how can you distract yourself and your child? How can you not wallow in that disappointment and that heartbreak? Yes, it's disappointing, but here are all the positives, here are all the wins, and let's move on. I'm not saying you shouldn't let them grieve that part. I've been in situations where I can absolutely see myself playing the part, and if you've had callback after callback and it's looking really close and then you don't get it, it seems worse, but I'd argue it's got more wins. That casting director liked you a lot to call you back again and again and saw something in you, and maybe you'll be cast in something they do in the future. And that brings me, I hope this is the right place to put it in for you, to my reframing of the word rejection. And I learnt this from a lovely hypnotherapist friend. And she said to me, rejection is one of two things. It's either redirection, which I love for the acting industry. That part wasn't for you, but you know what? You're going to get redirected somewhere else. Or, heaven forbid, it's protection. That part wasn't right for you for whatever reason. We'll never know. I take children's safety in this industry very seriously. I'm a registered chaperone, so that I look out for children's welfare and safety. Perhaps that piece for you, for whatever reason, was not safe, was not going to lead you to a good place, and you've actually been protected from it. So I won't go too deep and dark in that. Perhaps you've just been protected because it would stop you from getting something else that was going to come up. Perhaps it was going to clash and it was going to cause you a whole heap of stress. So if you can get rid of that horrible word rejection and say, hey, we've just been redirected, or we've just been protected from that. It wasn't for us or for me, and we're moving on to the next thing. A couple of phrases you could use rather than, oh well, this really matters and this does hurt, and let's do something nice and let's move on to the next thing. So I've already touched upon the reality of the industry, and I thought I might do a little bit of comparison to school, because a lot of people have been to school, and it could well be that your child is at school. They might not be if they're fully into this industry. Perhaps they're currently being tutored on set, but there will still be that school provided. I digress. Most people can think of school and know school and have a school experience of their own or their child. And here's how it differs from school. In school, you get feedback. You get loads of feedback. You get reports. You get parents' evenings. You know where you stand. You're shown the levels, the grades, the targets, and there's a clear outcome. You have something you're aiming for. Maybe you're aiming for different things in different subjects, but you have aims, you have outcomes. And you know who to contact. If you need more help and support or advice, perhaps there are different people to contact within the school, whether you need guidance or clarity, or whether it's a pastoral problem or a specific subject. You know, or you can find out who to reach out for help. And that's wonderful. But in this industry, you don't get that. As I've already said, you often hear absolutely nothing back. Nothing. Which is why you just need to send that tape and forget it, in my opinion. And you don't get feedback. It's very rare. I feel, have I seen more child feedback than adult feedback? Possibly, but then a lot of that comes from her agent, which is wonderful. And I've got a whole nother episode on how to get an agent. So check that out if you haven't already. The agent will be on your side and will give you feedback. Sometimes, wonderfully, will give you feedback from your tape before the deadline, and you can even tweak it and make it better before you send it on. I love that about our agency. They ask for it early. We get it in early, and then if we've missed something or need to add something, or they suggest a tweak, I don't know, it could be a costume or a hair and makeup or a reaction or an eyeline, and then we can get that tweak in. We can feel really, really good that we've done everything we possibly can to make that tape land well. So agents should and will give you feedback, in my opinion, but you won't get it directly from the casting directors. That's very rare. Unless, of course, they're bringing you for a callback, then they might be asking from them or the directors, tweaks or try playing it a different way, especially if you've got a live one on Zoom or in person. I believe there's more in-person child callbacks because they really want to see how they respond with the adults rather than on Zoom in the comfort of their own home. You might get feedback there and then, but you still might hear nothing after that callback. Not even a no. So be ready Be understanding that you don't get feedback, and that's normal, because the last thing I want you to do as a parent is being cross and frustrated and looking for this feedback, because you won't get it. And if you do get some, lovely, bonus, soak it up, act on it, think about it, use it. And that's gold, I think, if you get some feedback in this industry. You're never told why they didn't get the part. It could be 100 reasons. Height, hair colour, vibe, energy, many different things. The pieces of the puzzle. Perhaps they were going to cast a particular adult and then they didn't, and now your child doesn't fit as part of that family or dynamic or whatever anymore. There can be 1,000,001 reasons as to why your child didn't get it, and it's usually was definitely not because they did anything wrong. It's just they didn't fit this time. And that's hard, isn't it? Especially, like I said, if you, like me, you were always passing things and doing well and being praised, and then suddenly you've got no praise, no feedback, no idea if you should change anything or not. So they just need to keep being themselves, listening to their agent if they've got one, and keep going if they want to. And if they don't, absolutely, obviously, don't force them into it. Again, my agent will say, if that child needs a break, they need a break. This should always feel fun. They want to go into it because they love it. It should never feel forced. Absolutely not. So that can be really hard, that comparison between what they're used to and what you're used to getting from school as to a comparison of what you now don't get anymore from the industry. So I feel like forewarned is forearmed. If you're going into this for the first time and you're prepared for this and you're like, yeah, what's the harm? I can send a tape and let it go. Absolutely. Then your child will feel like that too. And it's so positive and empowering, and you can both run with it and enjoy yourselves. So my next point is reframe what a win is. And I feel I've talked about this already, but I'll go over it in case I've missed something here. So these are wins. Doing a self-tape, like how exciting, especially when it comes to the first time to get a self-tape request. I still love them now. I've done millions of self-tapes. This is how I know I should carry on, is because I still get excited when I get a self-tape request. I've seen lots of actors, maybe my age, maybe younger, going, oh God, I got 6 self-tapes to do this week or whatever. Whereas there are some that would absolutely love to have that opportunity. And I think if you're still enjoying them and you still get excited about the different characters and setting it all up, I really don't mind getting my lights back out again. I'd love a full setup. If you have a spare room, wonderful. If you can set a space up, especially if your child's getting lots of tapes, that's going to save you time if it can all be set up. As you might know already, my favourite self-tape wall is actually in the kitchen, so I do pack the lights away and get them back out, or I might leave them out and hope no one trips over them for a little bit if I've got quite a few tapes to do on the bounce. Anyway, I digress again. What on earth was I talking about? Yes, the wins. So getting self-tapes are absolutely the wins. Getting called into the room, into callbacks. In-person is much less these days since COVID. And if your child's called for an in-person callback, how exciting. That's absolutely a win. But as Julia said when I had my chat with her, she's an agent in South Wales. And she was saying, parents, be warned that you need this pocket of money, because if you're having to travel into London and perhaps you're not from London, you are going to need some money for travel. Perhaps you need an overnight stay. Think about it. It's not completely free to start up. And obviously the children do get paid for their jobs, but that goes to them. That's very exciting. If you can set them up a savings account or whatever for their money that they're earning in the industry, that's really, really exciting. Tax, etc., you'd have to look into. I've not got to the point yet where my child's earned enough to worry about that, but that would be a whole separate episode. I'll get someone in to help us out with that. But you are going to need some funds. Most of it is free. You can do it from home. You can use your phone for these self-tapes. But if you want to level up, you might want to paint a wall, get some microphones, get some lights, etc. So having a pocket of money for this hobby, perhaps it becomes the career, how exciting, then be warned. That is often needed. And another win, taking direction. If the child's had that bit of feedback on a Zoom call, on an in-person, maybe an email, try it like this, and they're able to take that direction, that's a huge win. That is performing within the industry. That is doing the thing. And I think that should be taken as a win as well. And finally, the sheer fact that they've put themselves forward, or that they've been chosen, possibly from thousands, to allow to be put forward, to do that tape or that audition or have that opportunity. I think the fact that they're brave enough to put themselves forward and doing it should also be celebrated as a win. And then booking the job, total bonus. And that is on top of that. And yes, celebrate it. Absolutely. How exciting. How wonderful. They've booked the job, bonus. But don't wallow in the disappointment if they don't. I think also what can happen is, I know for adults, certainly, I've not seen it yet with children, but I'm sure the same thing happens, is you can get penciled for a role and you're like, oh, exciting. I'm saving the date. I've been penciled for this, and then taken away. Or in some cases, and I hope this doesn't happen to you, and it has happened to me before, getting given that role and then having it taken away for some reason. Perhaps the funding falls through and the project never goes ahead. That is totally out of your control, out of your child's control. Yes, it's so disappointing, but you still got to take it as a win. They still got that part. Okay, it never went ahead. Rejection is protection or redirection. Just keep coming back to that almost as a motto if it doesn't happen on that occasion. It does really help me. Okay, so letting it go. I've said this already. Send the tape, let it go. And I think this is one of the most important skills to learn. We're all practicing our acting, our singing, our dancing, our whatever we need to learn. So many random skills that might crop up. I was learning to whistle this week for one of my auditions. So we're doing all of the training all of the time. But nobody trains you in letting it go. That's a sort of mindset thing that you have to figure out for yourself. And I really hope this episode helps the parents let it go, helps the young people let it go, to learn to do this. It sounds simple, doesn't it? Oh, just let it go. It's so easy to say, but it's not always easy to do. So once that tape is sent or that in-person audition is done, whatever it's for, it's gone. It's out of your control now. It's out of their control. They've done everything they can possibly do in all of the circumstances that they were given to that point, and now it's done. So chill. It's no longer yours. Don't carry that energy. Check out my previous episode to this one, actually, if you haven't already. My conversation with Julia. Like I said, she's an agent from JK's Management in Wales. And she will absolutely back this up. She says, send it and forget about it. So it's not just me saying this as a mum, as a performer, but agents are saying this as well. So how about some practical ways to move on then? Because it's so easy just to say, well, just move on, just forget about it. So practical things you can do is not check your emails every hour. That's not going to help. Like I said, periodically, of course, check your junk. You don't want to actually miss something. What if they get a call back and then you miss it? That would be terrible. You're like, Lisa, you told us to chill out and forget about it, and actually we missed an email. No, don't do that. Use your sensible smart head. Maybe diarise. Maybe you check your junk once a week. I don't know. Whatever this works for you. Obviously, don't miss things, but don't be checking your emails and refreshing your emails every hour or minute. That's just stressful, isn't it? Have something else planned for that day or the next day, or if it was quite, if you've travelled and your child is exhausted from all this going on, perhaps the day after that, but have something nice planned. It doesn't have to be expensive or huge, or perhaps it is, perhaps you have gone to London and actually you've had to stay and the next day you are visiting somewhere, or perhaps it's as simple as baking something or having a meal together, or what does your child like? I don't know, a bike ride, whatever. Have something nice planned. So you can just shift your focus onto that. Do celebrate the win. It's done. Wonderful. Well done. You did so well, or however you want to phrase that. Have a chat about it. Obviously, reflect on it. Excuse my cat if you can hear her in the background. She's an old girl and she actually sounds like a peacock, and she does like to shout for my attention. I've been talking for quite a while now, so excuse Boo shouting if you can hear her. So plan something nice for the next day. Keep life moving. Everything else has to happen, right? You can't all just stop because an audition's happening, and you can't just be waiting. And don't keep rewatching that tape. I think there's a time and a place for rewatching, and different actors Some like to see them monitor during a shoot. Different actors work in different ways. So do different directors, of course. I think there's a time and place for watching back tapes. I let my daughter, she's 11 now, I let her watch back tapes when we're working together, actually creating the self-tape, because we've already planned and talked about what we're after. And if I say to her, oh, that eye line's off, or that you're not quite getting that or feeling that, I think it's almost better for her to see it and hear it than to hear it from me. It's a bit hard, I suppose, being her drama coach and her mum, because I suppose I'm good cop and bad cop. I do have the agent to back it up, so that helps me out. But I think if she sees it or hears it, she goes, oh yeah, I know, and tweaks it. But similarly, if they're not ready for this yet, we can all, I suppose some see themselves on camera and, hear their voices recorded more often than others. It depends where you're at in your journey. But we can all be super critical of ourselves, can't we? Especially when we see ourselves for the first time, or I don't like my hair or my outfit or my shape or the way my voice sounds. Incidentally, it sounds different on a recording. It sounds different to others than it sounds to yourself. You probably know this. The voice is traveling through airwaves, right, and received in the ear, where we hear our own voice. So that's how we hear someone else's, through the air. We hear our own through blood, bone, muscle, everything that's in our head. So actually, I think we sound a whole lot more resonant and maybe softer, maybe lower than we are in real life. And then you've got the playback of a recording. So how is the recording recorded it and playing it back? So it's not exactly how their voice sounds. It's definitely not how it sounds to themselves. It's probably closer to how it sounds to others. But I feel like I've waffled on about that and got hell-bent on what the voice sounds like. What I'm trying to say is, if your child is at a point where they're finding their work cringe or they don't like watching themselves back, perhaps that's a waste of your time right now to be watching tapes back. But if it works for you because they're savvy at watching and noticing in themselves, like I said, it works for Lacey. She can spot it and it's a backup for me. I don't have to justify myself. She looks at it and goes, oh yeah, I know what you mean. I'm going to do this. So it's really useful for us. But I think if she'd been much younger or less experienced, perhaps that would be something that would be a bit of a waste of our time and a bit of a battle at this stage. I also quite like to, for myself and my children, watch self-tapes back periodically. Go and look at we've got nothing to do, no auditions coming in or whatever. And this is a really cool exercise. You can go back, you can watch it back. You can play the other character, perhaps. The reader, you could create that as a character. You could play a different objective or a different age. Or perhaps you've learnt a new acting skill and you want to put it into practice. Go and revisit an old self-tape. Or make notes. Imagine you're the director or the casting director. What is going really well in this tape and what would you improve? I think it's wonderful to critique your own work as long as you're in the right headspace and you're not just critiquing looks or I don't like my voice. Again, that's really unhelpful. So your child, if that works for them. If it's a fun exercise to go and revisit an old tape, I love it because obviously they're my little darlings. So I love watching them back. And with my own work, I've got to put my subjective head on now. And actually, I do enjoy watching my work back now. And that's changed. I didn't in the beginning. And now I'm so used to, I think I said the other day, I'm bored of seeing my own face. I'm so used to it now, it really doesn't bother me. And I'm looking at different elements rather than whether I like my hair that day, for example. So use rewatching. So that was my fourth bullet point of practical ways to move on. And the practical way was don't keep watching the tape. But I've totally gone down a tangent of giving you, I think, quite a fun exercise that you can use if you decide to rewatch the tape. Just not that one that you're waiting for. Let that go. Stop watching that one. If you're desperate to watch a tape, go and watch a different one. Go and watch one from weeks or months ago, or go and make the tape playing the other character in the scene or something, so that it is not just watching it over and over and going, oh, did I do well? What mistake did I make? Etc. I don't think that's healthy. So yeah, for your children, just make this a routine. It's part of everyday life, is sending a tape and forgetting about it, or going to an audition, being congratulated, and then moving on, even if you never hear anything, which is very likely. Okay, so I've kind of said what not to do. What could you say to your child? if they don't get it or you never hear back. Because I think your response is important. It sounds like I'm saying just ignore it. And I don't want that either. Of course, I want you to be able to praise and big up your children and also to acknowledge their pain. This is so difficult, isn't it? Because I've said that my pain was emphasized with beautiful sympathy, that it made me feel even worse. You don't want to go to the flip side and brush off their emotions entirely. Oh, well, never mind, we forget about it. The podcast says we must forget about it. Obviously, there is a place to acknowledge their feelings and your feelings too. So tell them they did a great job, even if they're coming out and saying, oh, I slipped over or this went wrong or whatever. Tell them they did a great job because they did. They turned up and they did it and they prepared. Sometimes they'll be able to do more preparation than others. Some deadlines are really quick turnarounds. So there might be a tape that they get to spend weeks perfecting and something else that they only have hours or days on. And you almost can't compare those, can you? Sometimes it's really fun and it's really real just to have a very quick tape, and sometimes they even do better. But they've prepared whatever way was possible. They've done the job. So you tell them that they've done a great job. Tell them that's another experience under their belt. Every audition that's done is closer, with the numbers game, is closer to that yes, isn't it? So rather than waiting for the yes, the no, or the no response, this is another experience under your belt. Well done. And this on to the next one. I mean, it sounds very casual, but perhaps you do have another tape to be getting on with, in which case, brilliant. That's the perfect tonic to forget about the one you've sent, isn't it? Right, on to the next one. Let's get on with it. And if you don't have one and you've got the time, like I said, perhaps you can revisit an old one, or perhaps you can come up with your own scene just to practice being in front of the camera and practice those acting skills. Don't say they've missed out. Don't give them, oh, you were the best one there. They probably were in your eyes, absolutely. Or maybe you don't think they were, but you're saying it to big them up. They'll feel that. Or I don't understand why. You know, people won't probably ever understand why with a lot of these, because you're not given the full picture. And there is no time for a casting director to give you probably any of the picture, let alone the full picture. And it's not them trying to be mean or horrible. It is just the way it works. They are getting thousands more submissions than they've had before now that we can move to self-tapes. So I don't think it's helpful to blame the industry or the casting directors, because they want your child to do well, but they do not have the time to feed back to everyone. So again, don't give that whole, oh, I just don't understand why you weren't chosen. I don't think that's helpful for them. It kind of keeps them stuck in that wallowing, doesn't it? So I think you're sensing what I'm trying to say here. Do the tape, send the tape, do the audition, go to the audition, praise your child, and move on from it. So normalizing rejection. I've talked about reframing it and calling it protection or redirection, but I quite like to normalize it as well in the industry. I think I've said several times now, it's full of no's and it's full of silence, and that is totally normal. Please let that be your comfort, that it's normal. Even the most successful actors have probably definitely heard no more times than they've heard yes. But we only see the yeses, don't we? So if your child's experiencing that, more no's than yeses, they are not failing. They are doing the job. They're in it. They're being an actor. And that's really exciting. So again, every no is a win because it's closer to the next yes. I actually really like the flower analogy. I've talked about this before on my YouTube channel. I think it was Darren Darnborough who I first heard speak about this. And I've seen it on his socials as well. So he's one of the founders of We Audition, which I'll probably talk about at some point. I've been a reader on We Audition and I found that really fun actually, and I found being on there really helpful. I don't think it's necessarily something you need at your stage yet. If you are being your child's reader, you know, they've got ready-made readers, but it can be a very lonely world for actors and it can be very hard to get a reader. So We Audition is the perfect place. Not sponsored or anything. I just think it's a really good platform to go and find a reader if you are a performer and you're on your own. You don't have somebody good that you can use. Anyway, I digress. So I'll paraphrase. I hope I get it right. But what Darren was saying is, there's a florist And here are all these flowers in the florist. Perhaps they are out on the, in the window or just outside the florist, all these beautiful flowers and bouquets. And you're a particular flower. Perhaps you're the lily or the tulip, and you're not chosen and you're not chosen. And this guy walks past the florist every single day. And one day he walks past the florist and it's his wife's birthday. And his wife's favourite flower is a pink lily. So lo and behold, he picks the pink lilies. It doesn't mean that all the other flowers are any less beautiful, or in this case, talented. They're just not right for that occasion at that time. The pink lilies were picked because it was that day, it was that person, it was that wife. Again, I'm sorry, Darren, if I'm butchering what you said, but this is how I understood it. So I said it to my daughter because I was worried, and we have active friends in the industry, and they were like, well, you really need to protect her. Actually, it's all about We Audition. The other co-founder of We Audition, Richard, he's going to be on the podcast in a few episodes' time, and I'm going to talk to him about his words for Lacey, because he was very protective and said, you need to know about all these no's. And we said, don't worry, we've got a strategy and we are going to protect her. So one of the early things I told her was this analogy. And I said, look, I think we were in Morrison's. I don't think it was any glamorous florist. I said, look at all these flowers, all beautiful, lovely, whatever. What would you pick if you were picking for your nana? And she said, her favourite colour's purple. I'd pick these purple ones. Yeah, and what would you pick for Nanny and her grandma on the other side? I would pick her these, I think it was pink or something very sort of soft, and said they would look nice in her house. I said, what about all the other flowers? Well, they don't suit for those people. I was like, right, interesting. This is just like an audition. It depends on the criteria. It depends who you're picking for. You pick different flowers depending on the occasion or depending on the person that you are picking them for. And it's a little bit like that in auditions. It doesn't mean any of the other flowers are less beautiful or less special. They're just not right on this occasion for what this person wants and needs. And she totally got this. It was really obvious. It was really tangible. They're right there in front of her, and we're having a nice conversation and learning. So thank you, Darren, for that one. Really, really enjoyed that, and it made a lot of sense to me. And I hope I've done it justice in probably explaining it in my own way, because I saw it a very long time ago and it sort of sat and stuck with me. So those flowers are not being rejected. They're just not being chosen. She had no, animosity towards the rest of the flowers. They just weren't being chosen on that time. So I hope that helps. Maybe you can use that. Or maybe, if your child's not into flowers, pick something else. Pick something that resonates with them so that you can explain that to them. So a bit of a reality check then, and time for me to be really honest, if I haven't been already. If that waiting and anxiety and emotional highs and lows are becoming overwhelming for you or for your child, then it's definitely something to look at, because you do not want to be damaging each other's mental health. That's absolutely got to be your top priority. This should be fun. This should be enjoyable. This should be filled with light and life and excitement. And if that waiting game is not working for you, go get some help somewhere from some professionals. I am by no means a professional in terms of psychology. I am a teacher. I've got my teacher hat on right now, just wanting everyone to be safe and be happy. And if this is not working, then it's something to look at. Find a way. Or if you're listening to this before you even step into the industry and thinking, I couldn't cope with that, then have a good chat with your child and see how they feel. And perhaps you can cope with it through their eyes. Perhaps they're like, yeah, that's totally cool. That's fine. I'm cool with that. It's no problem. I think if you set it up from the beginning that there is a huge amount of rejection in the industry, but that's just a part of it, or you've done that reframing, then that's cool. But if you know it's too much, then seek ways to help you with that, because I would not want to be sending somebody into feeling like that, into constantly feeling anxious. That's a really horrible way to live. And do reach out if you are struggling, and I will try and point you in the direction of more help, because I don't think anybody should be feeling that stressed and that anxious over these auditions and these self-tapes. Your child needs that steadiness, don't they? More than anything. So don't give them any pressure. There's no expectation. There is just love and support from you. And I hope I haven't offended anyone by telling them how to look after their child. That is not what I'm aiming to do at all. I'm just trying to give you some advice of, this works for me, this works for our situation. I would love to hear if you've got some specific coping strategies that really work for you and your child. Drop me an email, drop me a comment, because I would love to hear what's working and share that with others, because I think the more we can share the positives and the more we can share, the ways of working and the help, then the better we're all going to feel and the better we're all going to achieve, right? So we're aiming for this grounded confidence that we want in our children, this resilience. I don't think I've used that word yet in this podcast. We are trying to build resilience, aren't we? If they can get those no's and they just, yeah, sure, it's fine, it's part of the industry, then fantastic. If they cannot affect them drastically, or perhaps not affect them at all, then wonderful. And this perspective, I've kept saying it's the industry, it's the industry, it's the industry. It is like that. That's the perspective. So if you're expecting, it sounds a bit negative, doesn't it, say expecting no's? If you're expecting more no's than yeses in terms of ratio, then you're well prepared. And I think all this comes from how we handle these moments. It's not just handling the wins, and please do go celebrate those wins, but it's handling the no's as well. And I really hope this episode gives you some tools. It doesn't just feel like me moaning on about it's hard and there's no's. Hopefully it's given you some tools or some ideas or some nuggets as to what you can celebrate, what you can focus on, and how you can deal with the huge heap of no's that are coming your way. I hope you do have a huge heap of no's coming your way, because that means you've got a huge heap of yeses sprinkled within those no's. So I wish us all a whole heap of no's, because the more no's we get, the closer we are to the yeses. So if this resonated with you today, you're not alone in this. It is part of the journey for every actor at every level, wherever you are. And I'm hoping to bring a lot more actors in to speak with me, to give you hope and hints and tips as to how they deal with it, because different actors are going to deal with it in different ways. So I'll have lots more hints and tips coming for you soon as to how you can deal with this. So if you need support around confidence, self-tapes, or starting out, pretty much everything I offer is linked across all of my socials, and that's at The Drama Coach. And as I mentioned earlier, you can drop me an email if there's something that you've enjoyed or you want me to include in future podcasts, or perhaps you have some tips to share with other parents and young actors. Drop me an email, lisa@thedramacoach.co.uk. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. If this episode resonated, do share it with someone who might need it. And don't forget to follow for more. You can find me on TikTok, Instagram, and other socials at The Drama Coach, and on YouTube for longer videos and training. See you in the next episode.